Ki aki ana te atekura, he tio, he huka, he ho hu, tihe mauri ora.
Thank you. In terms of the health and safety statement, which is on page 6, we can take that as read. Was there anything you wanted to add, Dave, in terms of that? Okay, so we'll then move to apologies. And we have Deputy Mayor Liz, we've got Maxine, and also Angus Hodgson for lateness. So I'm happy to move receipt of those. If I can have a seconder for those. Thanks, Angela. I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. And given those apologies, welcome to Roger in terms of Waipa representative. Sarah, you're here for... So welcome. And I'd also like to extend a welcome to Susan Collins in terms of, and I did have your acting regional manager system design with NZTA. So welcome, Susan. And okay, we will then move to the confirmation of agenda. Okay, thanks, Angela. Someone to second that. I think Eugene was seconding that. I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Are there any disclosures of interest in terms of matters on the agenda? No, there are not. There is no public forum this morning. So we'll move to item 6, and this is the confirmation of minutes of the previous Public Transport Subcommittee meeting. I just had an amendment in addition to those, and that's in terms of the attendance list. And from memory, Chair Pamela, you were online for that. So if we could just have that noted in terms of the minutes. With that minor amendment, if I can have a mover and seconder for, thanks, Mayor Adrian, seconded by Eugene. Are there any matters requiring correction or clarification before I put that? There are not, so I will put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. And also just noting the receipt, if I can have a mover and seconder for receipt of the Regional Transport Committee meeting minutes. Mayor Adrian, Chair Pamela, I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Before I go any further, I'd like to introduce to the committee Brooke, who is the Democracy Advisor. So Brooke is looking after the PT subcommittee from now on. So welcome, Brooke. And we will then now move to item 7.1, the Director's Report. Okay, so we've got Brian and Nigel.
Good morning, Chair, committee members. Just a fairly brief report that we've got for you this morning. So there's three items to highlight for the committee's attention. The first being the Hamilton Network Review that has been currently underway. So a draft has been received of this report. And so it's just noting through this report, there are ways in which we can increase the attractiveness of bus travel within the city. And some of that is going through the increasing frequency and creating more direct routes. So proposals through this report are effectively cost neutral, and so which is obviously of benefit for us at the moment. We're operating in a constrained funding environment, and some consolidation of those routes has been proposed. It should be noted that actually throughout the ongoing development of this, any proposed service changes will obviously be engaged with this committee, and that on-the-ground improvements, which in case there are requirements for transport infrastructure along any of those planned routes, will be ongoing between Hamilton City Council and Waikato Regional Council. The next item through the director's report that we have is an update on the North Waikato network reviews. There are two pieces of work that are currently ongoing in this space at the moment. And just to note the difference, there's one which is looking at the Waikato Regional Council routes, Route 21, the Northern Connector, and Route 44 for Pukekohe. And this is focused on optimising the existing budget and preparing for contract renewal. And so any future improvements that are identified for this are only likely to be made after and is contingent on funding. Separate to this, but also or somewhat related, is that Waikato District Council is undertaking its own wider study, and that's focusing on links through to South Auckland and also focusing on active travel through walking and cycling. And it will also just have a review of current and future travel patterns. It will also take account of the impact of population growth and any triggers that may exist for future service provision. So both studies are currently going through workshops and option assessment and at the end of the year. And then finally on there, we have a transition to the zero bus fleet. And so this is based on a requirement. It's still looking at making sure that the government mandate that has after the 1st of July 2025, all new buses coming into the country must have zero emissions at the exhaust pipe. And so contracts between Waikato Regional Council and bus operators are due for renewal, and there's a bit of work that must be done in order to reflect that. So this is supported by two aspects. There's a zero emission bus roadmap, which make sure that we are focused on how we can support our regional and national climate commitments and promote sustainable transport, as well as a technical implementation plan for the region. And together those two will influence the overall bus contract renewal program, as well as informing the development of the regional public transport plan. And so there is a council workshop scheduled, so regional council workshop scheduled for the 27th of November, and that will focus on the first aspects of that and the strategic considerations and the role that council will have in that ZEB transition. And that's a brief summary of the report. Through the chair, I'm happy to take any questions or for myself or Brian.
Okay. Thanks, Nigel. I'll open it up for questions. Angela, yes.
Yeah, thank you, Nigel, for the report. I just had a question around paragraph 8 with the new frequent service.
Yes.
How can we accelerate that? It says, we'll consider it in the next 2 to 3 years. Yeah, we've been talking for a while about the next one. Yeah, just wondering, how can we make it go faster?
Very good question, Councillor Strange. Thank you. Well, obviously there is a lot of planning that is going on at the moment. And so I think we are at the moment understanding what the financial constraints are that we've got and how changes within this, within these overall, so some service consolidation is proposed. And so whether or not we can make changes within the existing budgets and network, if this is the priority for this committee and for the city, we can obviously make sure we look at that. But I guess, Brian, would you have any view on that, or maybe Phil?
I guess the first comment would be that the network reviews that Nigel has talked to both for Hamilton and the North Waikato area are something that we do and we need to do every 3 years. So this is about just checking that we are operating an efficient network, and we have done those reviews in the past, and this batch of these reviews is just the latest iteration. What it's backing up is everything that you've already been talking about in terms of wanting services that were identified as low cost, low risk trials within the 24-34 plan that were not funded by the agency. What this is saying is that if we were to adjust the network, and by that it means doing what was done for the Meteor by taking away some of those access routes and investing that money into direct routes, we could potentially see increased frequency in some corridors and potentially changes to the network like the one in paragraph 8. As Nigel said, those would come to you for consideration through this committee, and the context of the final item on this paper, which is the process of renewing all of our contracts and in the same process trying to move to EV vehicles, is all part of the same discussion at the end of the day. So what's the shape and the function of the new contracts that we enter into, and what can we deliver as part of that change in the context of a new network? And that's the PT Pathways paper that you've got later on the agenda, as well as this work, all coming together. Whether we can do something this year or next year is another, that I think by certainly by April, May, June next year, we'll be in a stronger position to know how quickly we can proceed with some of these changes. I think we've got more work to do in the next 3 to 4 months to help form up what we do tactically around what we're hearing from these reports. So we'll come back to you in the new year as a committee and talk that through, I think.
Yeah, thanks for that response. Yeah, I would, consider it definitely a priority that we do this. I remember last training, we had aspirations to deliver 3 fast and frequent in 3 years, and we've delivered 1 in my 5 years. So really keen to see something on the eastern side of the river servicing those communities. And I do recall a lot of work has gone into public consultation up in the northeast of Hamilton already, and also utilising flex to pick up where we do take away some of those coverage routes. So just really keen to see it progress, and interested from a regional council point of view on staffing to make it happen. Just making sure we've got the right people to accelerate our aspirations. So thanks for that response, and I'm sure as a committee we look forward to seeing what you come back with. So
Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. On the same topic, Hamilton's, I know many of our councillors are really interested in this particular route as well, because we've put in infrastructure ahead of this, and we're expecting it to happen sooner. And so, some of our councillors are going, hang on, we put this in, and yet we look kind of silly right now with all these like fancy new bus stops, and we still have, these relatively slow and indirect services going. So I'm interested in, say, if it was going to require additional funding and regional council was of the mind to retain some local share to support that, like what is the earliest, and there was a focused push to just make it happen, what would be the earliest that you make it happen?
There's lots of ifs in that, and I can't answer on behalf of council and the
Yeah.
decisions it makes in its annual plan. The local share for all of the service enhancements in the 2024 to 2027 period started in year 2, so the middle of next year. So there's no money in this financial year for us to make any changes. If council determined that it wanted to keep that local share in its budget, and that's a conversation that hasn't started for us as an organisation yet, then the changes would line up with the transition we're making to adjust our network twice a year. So we're looking to make adjustments. And remind me, Trudy, it's April and September, October. At the times of the year, we tend to make those changes. So potentially the next opportunity would be in about a year's time.
Sorry? In 1 year?
If the budget is in
It'd
the
be
case from
September next
July, it would
year.
be September next year.
Yeah, okay. Okay, that makes sense. And I mean, I know with our annual plans and long-term plans, I mean, this will ultimately be a decision for your council, but generally the draft is kind of locked in quite early, December or, you know, very early in the new year, which would give like not confirmation, but a steer, right, in terms of then preparing for those changes to be ready when like a plan is signed off if that's the mind of the regional council. So, I mean, would it be of value to say, like, to include a note in here to say that the committee would like to see, subject to regional council funding, the Rotorua route kicking off in September of next year as like something to aim for?
Potentially. I think I would just add to that, though, that as a signal, yes, absolutely. Okay. The one thing I would say, though, is that this report is still in draft, and there are potentially other things in there as well. And we need you to see what that report is saying, because this could be one of a series of other things. This one has been picked out for the report today, but there are other adjustments and tweaks that would be needed to enable that as much as anything else. The idea of suggested sounds like it's getting support around the same.
Okay, so Chair Pamela, were you going to comment on that?
I've just, it's interesting when you participate in these conversations because it always seems like it is full of ifs, right? And it can be very difficult, I think, for all of us to see the decision tree, you know what I mean? And the timing, and making sure that this committee is sending the right signals to the regional council ahead of our planning process, ahead of our discussions, so that nothing comes as a surprise and we don't gazump ourselves by not talking about it early enough. And so I appreciate this committee's willingness to say, hey, when can we send that signal really clearly? And I'm not across that decision tree enough, so I'm looking to the director to give us some solid guidance as to when are we best placed to put forward a motion in this committee that can then come through regional transport committee. It would come through, I don't know, wherever it comes through, however that magic happens. But I do take on board your point, Mr. Director, around that there's a few reviews, because I of course am looking at the North Waikato Network review as well. And then that leads into that conversation of how do we ensure that our timelines are aligning with Auckland Council's decision-making timelines as well, because it would be lovely to see them actively participate in support of those routes. So I don't have a clear answer here, but I suppose I'm asking the question in support of Councillor Thompson, that I would like us to be able to show clearly the intent and the direction, and let's get out of our own way if we can.
Bill.
So I think the short answer to that is now. This is a timely meeting in that, as Hamilton has already mentioned, they are starting to work on their annual plan. Our annual plan process starts with a workshop in early December and feeds into a process that continues into January and so on. So the limited nature of these subcommittee meetings means that I'd recommend you pass something today if you wanted to, and that would then feed back through that process over the next few weeks and months.
That just prompted me to think, Phil, also Hamilton City Council yesterday in our council meeting confirmed that we will retain, it was a majority of our local share funding for transport included. So that gives us the ability to continue to invest in public transport infrastructure over the next 3 years with our local share. So it's a reduced program, but it's there. And so again, we're in a good place to partner with regional council in terms of linking up service improvements and infrastructure improvements. So I think it's yeah, would be helpful for that kind of message to be sent through to regional council in terms of when considering the annual plan, to know that we're ready to partner.
Thanks, Sarah. Angela.
Yeah, I just wanted to yeah, confirm that yeah, now is a great time to send a signal. And yeah, just the question about if we are going to send a signal, what would that resolution say, reflecting HCC's good work that's happened already, and how we can, you know, we've talked for a long time about lining up LTP investments, and this is a fantastic way to actually make that happen with yeah, infrastructure and services lining up. So yeah, let's think of a resolution.
I've just asked Phil to craft a draft. While that's happening, any other questions from members on the report and what's been outlined by Nigel? Angela.
Different matter.
Yes. That's right.
Yeah, just thinking about North Waikato and the number 44 alongside Te Huia services as well. Yeah, with our intention to stop at Pukekohe, and I do recall later on the agenda there is discussions around that. So yeah, it seems that this trial and the other startup review of Te Huia, do they land at the same time? Because it would be great if we could have some certainty, or, you know, both at hinging on each other. My question would be how, you know, what do we need to do to make sure that they both keep going?
So you're right, the operations report identifies that we have some small amendments to Route 44 to make to better line up services to meet Te Huia trains at Pukekohe. In addition, Pukekohe station reopens in January, February next year with the reintroduction or the introduction of electrified metro services from that location. I believe that Auckland Transport are looking to start with 3 trains an hour, and that they will look to increase that to 5 or 6 trains per hour shortly after, through 2025. Having looked at the timetable for Route 44, we were of the view that we had already made adjustments fairly recently to meet the closing time of Tuakau College. So we didn't want to change that, because Tuakau College changed their closing time to meet our bus. So with that number of trains going through Pukekohe, which is a significant uplift on what it was before the station was electrified, the feeling was that most 44 services would meet a train fairly easily at Pukekohe station relatively soon after Pukekohe station opens. So we didn't want to overdo it, because there will be a train every 10 minutes from there eventually. But we have been certainly thinking about it, and the operations report notices that as well.
Anything further? Phil, how are you getting on?
Maybe something along the lines of the subcommittee acknowledges the recommendations arising from recent bus network reviews in Hamilton and North Waikato, and supports the continuation of sufficient local share to implement adjustments to bus services, including the introduction of higher frequency routes. as soon as possible, or from July 2025 or something. Is that what you're thinking?
We get that on the screen, just so we're all clear and it's easy to amend. It's a new one. Yes. Okay, thank you. Just do a recent bus network. Okay. So if members can look on the screen, so this is.
And the committee also notes Hamilton City Council has retained local share with the ability to partner with. Okay.
Well, it's fine
Yeah.
because it's strategically sent
Okay.
message to the regional council.
Yeah.
They know the narrative.
Yeah.
This is a,
Excellent.
hey, it's, if we get down into the nitty gritty.
Yeah, our council's terrible. We're like right in the detail all the time.
So maybe that comment about sufficient local share, we could say from all councils or by all subcommittee members or something.
Have your hand up, Pamela, or were you? Okay. Angela.
Yeah, I was just, sorry, I missed what Eugene said before. Do we need North Waikato in there, or do you want just to stick to Hamilton? Mm.
There is 2 studies happening around North Waikato at the moment. We just had a presentation early in the week, early last week, around that. So, sort of coming to a head sort of thing on where we're going. Aligning with, there's a lot of discussion about obviously lining up with Te Huia, but with all of the frequent newer services starting in January, they will end up connecting. Hopefully they put more bums on seats for them, the Te Huia than the others, AT network. And yeah, we have a different view on local share unsubsidised than Hamilton City. So I don't know whether North Waikato needs to be in there.
Okay.
Would that- would that, what's there, would that reflect just what's in the network review, or like does the network review kind of link into that PT's pathway work and what was intended for the next 3 years?
So
or
the
couple of years?
timeframes of the PT pathways work are, as will be described later, are after 2027, so outside of
okay.
the current funding
Yeah.
cycle. And we think those are things that would come up within the new contracts.
Okay.
So effectively what you're asking the regional council to do here is retain the local share that it had in its long-term plan that would have been subsidised by NZTA to launch the package of routes that were in the low cost, low risk programme, and to try and deliver some of those improvements with changes to the existing network earlier than that. And you're suggesting that we do it as much as possible within the existing approved NZTA funding envelope. But there will be a higher rate of local share into that pool in order to deliver these changes. That's the conversation that the regional council ends up needing to have later on.
Okay. Okay, happy to. Yeah, I'm happy to adjourn for a few minutes, and then we'll come back and look at the recommendations. Yes. Yes.